Another thing that I wanted to do is creating a good liner brush. Because as some of you guys may know, in the recent episode I kinda lost all of my brushes from Art Studio, and I'm recreating them all over again. So I have my basic brush that's really close to that tutorial brush that I shared once with all of you. It's a good, heavily texturized with my canvas, not really a canvas texture, and it's a shape like that I'm using all over the place. It has good control of opacity and transparency and flow. Opacity and flow, I mean. Something that's really hard to make work in Procreate. In Art Studio we have a really good situation about that control. Then I have the dual brush, which is pretty much the same thing, but also a dual brush is eating away some of the shape. So that's what it looks like this way. Looks pretty cool, but this was like a first iteration of this brush, and it had a bit of a too messy, torn, fluffy kind of look. So then I created the version 2, pretty much the same thing, but the application of the dual brush, the second brush, was a lot more subtle and clean. It just creates a variation to the shape of the stroke. Like, it's just not a perfectly even and has different kind of the edge for the brush stroke. So this is mostly what I'm using lately. I just like the dual brush for making every stroke unique. They don't look like just perfect cylinders that you're drawing, even if you have no pressure control for the size. It still makes this natural variation of the shape. Then I created Borrow Blender, so it's just blending things. It's kind of a messy one. I remember I had quite a few versions of Blender before I lost all of it. Wasn't a huge loss anyway. I like recreating the brushes every now and then to improve, evolve things a bit. New brushes lead to a slightly different art style every time, which is a good thing as well. But yeah, it kind of works pretty well as a blender, right? Never mind, let's move on. So let's start with the basic Borrow brush. We just need a liner, so there's not a lot of stuff to do, really. Stamp shape. Something close to this, a hard round thing, but not as hard, because I like to have some freedom, some space for the texture of creating dents in the shape when it's applied in a stroke. So let's see, maybe this will work actually. Grunge 6. Let's limit the size, since this is gonna be a liner. We don't need it to be bigger than 25 pixels, that's for sure. And normally it would be nothing more than 10. Now the pattern, the texture. We may want to keep it as it is, since afterwards we're gonna be painting on top of it, but that doesn't really matter. And Sketch usually works better with something more like a paper look, but this kind of paper texture is very old school. Maybe this will work out as a texture actually, but we'll barely notice it, right? Something strong to apply the texture. It's a very tiny line. We need something to really... Why is palm rejection so bad today? I just went out of the shower. Maybe I'm too moisty. Height. That's probably gonna work really well, but we need to lower the opacity of it a lot. There we go, now we're getting something. 10, maybe we should increase contrast because the texture is very gray. 50? Oh yeah. Now opacity 15 maybe. Nope. 12? Okay, that's too strong. 25, 11. Well, that's looking pretty cool. I hope I won't regret having this kind of variation to the line. Another thing, a bit more consistent and giving a better impact on the actual shape of the stroke, because right now we have some transparency going on, but we can see how the line is pretty much always absolutely the same thickness. And when you're drawing with a tiny line on a like texturized paper, it has some variation to the actual shape of the line, so we should add jittering. So it barely has any right now, it's just a little jitter for the angle. We can increase it to 25, but it's not gonna change much. Size, that's the thing we need to change a lot. 50% jittering of the size. So every new stamp in a stroke will have different size, and that's gonna create a good noisy kind of outline. There we go, that looks pretty cool. Maybe a little bit less. 40? I think I like it. Now there's another thing to think on. Do we want to be able to draw such a transparent line when we press slightly? Because a liner is usually like an inky kind of thing, so it's always opaque, and that creates a pretty cool sketch style. This right now is more like a pencil, which is also a thing I would like to save. So I'm gonna call it Borrow Pencil. I don't know why I keep writing Borrow everywhere. I guess it's so I would easily recognize my brushes from everything else in the app. So this is the pencil. We may want to add the tilting thing to it. So let's probably do that. Tilt. Well, it's doing something. Oh no, tilting in Art Studio is still all over the place, like it's not gonna squish the pattern that we're tilting. Meaning, when you're tilting a pencil, like you wanna be drawing thick lines when you go like this, but not when you go like this. It's weird that it's perfectly round. I remember I talked to Lucky Clan about this, and they are making huge changes to the brush engine right now in the beta version, which is probably why I lost my brushes, like I wanted to install the normal version, and then I forgot to save all the brushes. That's probably everything got lost. So literally it's in progress right now, I suppose. But the stable final version is still having this kind of a simple tilt that's just increasing the size of the brush. So yeah, we're not gonna be using that for sure. For a pencil, it's not gonna work out well. Now let's turn this into a liner by simply making things less reactive to pressure. I would control some flow, but not as much for sure. Minimum flow should be like 50% at least. Yeah, like this is the slightest look of it when I press very lightly. And this is a harder pressure. Almost no difference. Looking pretty good. Maybe a bit fluffy look of the line, like the shape of the stamp itself. This one is not exactly perfect, but considering how tiny this detail is on the line, we should probably call it not important. So let's start sketching instead of doodling.